lifers. Today, we are so excited. We have Dylan with us, and we will let Dylan kind of go ahead and explain. You are a transplant patient, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you had done.
Yeah, two-time transplant recipient. I was born with cystic fibrosis in 1979. Did pretty well battling the disease for about 37 years. And then in 2017, was transplanted, had a double lung transplant in St. Louis, Missouri. And did about 3 months in recovery on that. Everything went well. I was, running and riding bikes with my kids and climbing mountains and doing all that for like never before. And then had some complications with antibody, rejection. And so, and then quickly was put back on the list, a second time for another double lung transplant. It was really difficult to find a second match with the donor because of the antibody issues I was having. I was screening out, 71% of people that were matched to me. So it was really unlikely, that I would get one. And we were living in New York City at the time. The doctors told us we need to go to Duke and we have a better chance there. We had evaluations and everything scheduled. And then someone called me out of the blue that I didn't know that had followed me on Instagram, and her cousin had just passed, and she was a nurse, and she had seen somebody do a deceased willed kidney donation, and so she said her family talked and they wanted to give her cousin's lungs to me, which was like the craziest call to get, because I'm like, well, that's really sweet, thank you for thinking of me, that's not how this works. There's a whole list, and there's not even to mention the fact that it's unlikely it would actually be a match. So, I said, thank you. I'm so sorry for your loss and all that. And then the next day, my doctor calls and said, we got a call from this woman, and these lungs are a match to you. I'm like, okay, first off, you can do that? Like, that's possible? And she's like, I've never heard of it ever before, but apparently there's like, it's happened 2 or 3 times with lungs. It's happened more with kidneys, but and I'm like, it's a match to me? And she's like, yes, it's a match to you. It's, it had one of the antibodies they were trying to screen out, but not the main one. And so, I'm like, oh, so we can't do it, right? She goes, no, all our team in New York have concurred with all the team in St. Louis. We all think you should take these lungs. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So that happened April 13th, 2019. And, they flew a doctor from New York to Kansas City is where the lungs were, and they looked good. They flew back with the lungs, and, we did the surgery. Everything went well. The rehab, everybody's experience is different, but the rehab, everything was just way easier for me the second time. And it's miraculous to go through once. It's miraculous to go through twice. It's impossible to try to verbally express it, other than to just say it's kind of like the miracle of receiving lungs at all in the first place, and breathing at all. You know what I mean? It just compounds the reality of the gift. So grateful to my donors, to God, to the doctors, to my family, to caretakers, everybody involved. I mean, it's amazing to be alive.
Yeah, that second one is definitely a whirlwind of from thinking you have to like go through all these other steps and do this, and then I've heard of, I know you heard of, directed for kidney or even for liver, but I've never heard of it for other organs. So that's amazing that happened. And with Instagram of all things, that was a connector. And that's how I found you. I was looking on Instagram and found you. I was like, oh, I want to see if we could get him to talk and tell us his story. Tell us. So you said you struggled with the disease for a significant amount of time before you got to the place where you needed a transplant. When you were told that you needed that first transplant, was that a drastic change for your life? What did that look like for you?
It was, although like I knew that was in the realm of possibility. My story is, we have 2 boys that we have through in vitro, and so we kind of my wife and I did all that process. And then I was doing well, you know, even a year after my second son was born. And then my health just like started deteriorating quickly. So it was really freaked me out. And you know, it was kind of like now of all times, you know, now. And I really struggled with it. And I, you know, when the doctors would have that conversation with me, in my mind, I was like, no, I'm putting this off. I'm putting this off. And I did, you know, for, I don't know, another 7 or so years, but, you know, fighting to, I just, yeah, eventually I just kind of had to, let it go a little bit, you know, and just realize like, hey, they're all, meaning the doctors, they're all suggesting that I be evaluated for this. And so I started to, you know, get evaluated. And then there was kind of a drastic fall for me where, you know, summer, fall, where I just couldn't stop coughing up blood. And, you know, it was, you know, I just kept having episodes, and it just was time, you know, it was just time. So they listed me, and it was about 2.5 months later that I got the call. So,
wow.
yeah.
So also coming up on your 2-year anniversary of the
Yep.
second
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
So
I know. I know how it is. I have 2 anniversaries now, but yeah,
yeah,
second,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
It's just amazing. You know, blessed to be alive at all. And as you saw on Instagram, I mean, the way that I kind of celebrate, among the ways I celebrate, is just visually, you know, with art. And so I try to make artwork about kind of the trauma and joy of all of it. You know, it's too much for words, really. I try to kind of visually express, like, you know, what it feels like to be so sick my whole life. Like I've never really known another way until I had a transplant. And then, you know, like what it kind of feels like to really breathe fully for the first time in my life, you know? So yeah, I do a lot of collage and sculptural things to just try, and they're all really kind of shiny and with glitter, and kind of turning kind of traumatic, really challenging things in life into like beautiful, you know, heavenly, glorious, you know, kind of things is the goal.
Yeah, I think just to interject a little bit, you know,
Yeah.
having had a double transplant myself,
Yeah.
I think it's good to have something to channel that experience into, because it's more powerful than words. You can't.
Right.
People always ask like, oh, well, how did it feel, and what were you going through, and you can't. You know, it's hard to express that in words. So be able to channel that through your art. You know, I think that's pretty. That's a great outlet.
Oh yeah, it's both after and before. I mean, you know, when I was at my lowest on 10% lung function in New York City, it was just, you know, that'd be hard anywhere, but with all those stairs, it was unbelievable. But I still would make myself, you know, go to the studio just to keep my spirit alive, you know, like still just create and still do something, even though, you know, like once I was sitting down on the floor and working on stuff, I was okay. But oh my gosh, it was a war to get there. But, you know, like I had to do it still to like keep my spirit alive. So
I love that you have that. And I really love how you explained it as trauma and joy together.
Right. Yeah.
That's really great. Can you kind of explain that more?
Yeah.
Why you came up with that?
Absolutely. It's both and, you know, and you know, it's you know, yeah, it's tragic in so many ways. Somebody lost their life, you know, there's you wrestle with survivor's guilt, you wrestle with, you know, feeling terrible for the family, you wrestle with feeling terrible for your family, you wrestle with, you know, the trauma of just the process, just the surgery itself, the rehab, and the, you know, and the difficulty you had before. There's all, you know, there's top trauma on top of trauma, and it's real. And, you know, I think it's like finding a way to acknowledge it, be honest with it, and but also, you know, balance that or frame that, you know, in a way of gratitude and joy, you know, to be alive at all. I mean, it's because it's not either or, it's both and. So, you know, for me, I definitely thought about that even from the earliest moments of recovery, you know, in more pain than I've ever been, you know, in my life, but also more joy than I've ever had, you know, because it's like, man, it's such a miracle. And I'm so, you know, blessed that, 2 times over, someone, gave me this gift. And it definitely, for me, like, it's over and above, the anything transactional. I could have never earned it. It's not about deserving. It's not about worth. It's not about striving. It's not, they don't look at your resume and, have you done enough? Have you been moral enough or nice enough, or have you prayed enough? Or they don't look at any of that. You're just given this gift, this free gift that's, it's not about deserve. It's not about earn. And the rest of your life is about receiving, a gift that you could never give to yourself, and it's humbling, and it's really vulnerable, and it's embarrassing, and it's, in all the good ways, because it's like, that's all those things that are true for transplant recipients. I mean, they're no less true for anyone, anyone that's been given the gift of breath. They didn't earn it. They didn't work to get it. They didn't, what I mean? It wasn't because of their accomplishments or their lack of, or any of that. They just were given a gift. Mm-hmm. And so, like, life becomes about, like, okay, how do I, in recognition and gratitude of that, now what do I do? But not out of a sense of guilt or shame that I got to prove something or earn that. I could never pay my donor back in that way. That's not how it works, and I can't run around and pay back all the people that, prayed for me and thought about me and supported me. I mean, it's not about that, like, it's a humble, it's really humbling to receive and think about, okay, how do I, what do I do in response to that gift?
Wow. That is totally awesome.
Can I ask you, for people who maybe are in a situation right now who are getting ready to be listed, or who have a family member who's getting ready to be listed, can you tell me a little bit about what was your list process like? What was that initial, going through the process up into transplant like for you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mentioned that kind of episode where I just was having a downfall of health. And so I had another one of those episodes in Kansas City. We were living at the time. They emergency ambulanced me to St. Louis to get emergency listed. And so, so I got listed then over a few days. And then thankfully I did start to do a little better, stopped having those episodes for, about a month and a half, but then by that time got the call. So, yeah, cause I was fortunate to not be inpatient and, not be, I mean, again, everybody has different stories, but I was fortunate to be outpatient and just got the call, and, we had to drive 4 hours to the transplant center. And I was also fortunate not to have any dry runs either time. It was really, kind of special. I mean, I just, I was preparing myself for that. Like, okay, well, drive these 4 hours, but they could just, it could not be the right situation. And, but it was both times. And so, and yeah, I was even, healthy enough both times that I walked in myself, which is kind of wild, to, just show up with a backpack and I'm here for a transplant. I mean, like I was kind of healthy otherwise than that. And that, yeah, that's a part of it too. I mean, each time, like I was exercising in some way, little though I could do, but up to the day, I was doing some kind of exercise, like, limited though it might be and on oxygen and all that, but up to the day of surgery. So both times, but especially the second, the doctors were coming around, like, just for real, like, tell us how that went so well. Like, how did it go? And I'm like, well, I mean, I've been exercising up to the day, and I don't know, people were praying. I don't know what to say, so I think, all that helped a lot.
I wanted to ask, I know between, you mentioned when you found out that you needed the second transplant, you said there was a moment, or not even a moment, but a period there where you were, a period of hesitation and kind of like disbelief, like, why me? Did you kind of get down, like, in despair for a while with that? Was that, yeah.
Both times for me, and they were different. They were a little different, but the first time, just, I think it just, it psychologically weighed so heavy on me, the amount of predicted years after transplant. And I just had these kids, who were at the time were like 1 and 3, and so I'm like, no, I got to push this off as much as I can. And in my mind, it was kind of like better to, be really sick and just endure it, and just, then kind of listen to all the doctors that are going like, you need to be listed for this. And, another person that was, in a different kind of health struggles, but kind of a mentor to me, was just like, hey, doesn't a part of you just want to be able to like play with your kids, and like run around with them? And, I'm like, I don't think I could have heard that from anybody but this guy, because he had been through his own stuff time and time again. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's what this is. So yeah, I kind of let that go. And it just would have been really difficult to explain to my former self, you know what I mean? Like what it's just living and breathing fully and being able to climb mountains with my kids, you know what I mean? And that not be this epic struggle, to ride bikes with them or whatever. And so, and then the second time did throw me to probably even deeper despair, because it was like everything had gone so well, and we moved back to New York, and it was right as we were moving back, like just a little before and then really after that we moved there, that my lung function just plummeted. And so it was like, what in the world? I mean, I'd done my 1.5-year appointment, and everybody was, sending me off and high-fiving, and the numbers were great. And then they just tanked instantly. So that certainly threw me into lots of despair. And, we moved to New York, but I'm having to go we lived in Brooklyn, and the hospital was at Columbia University in Washington Heights. So it was like an 1:10 subway ride that I'm now doing like 3 times a week. I'm just like, this is not what we moved here for, like like all the time. And, so on those rides, man, it was rough. And I just had, for me, it was like a lot of, meditative devotional time for me. Just read a lot of scripture and prayed, and that just a lot of asking why. I had a lot of questions for God, and I just asked him, and kind of journaled and did that on that. And, I realized it then, but of course, even more so now, like that was, that whole period of time for me of about 9 months was like, learning a lot of things, asking a lot of questions, getting some answers, and not, of course, getting answers to everything, but there was a lot to process for sure. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So can I ask, this is a personal question, so if you don't want to answer, I totally understand.
Yeah, it's good.
You've mentioned faith, and when we talk to people, we hear that a lot. So I'm always curious, how has your faith journey been? Has it always been pretty strong, where you have these conversations and kind of wrestle with God, or is it something that's kind of grown through this transplant process?
Yeah. So for me, one, having cystic fibrosis from, being born, I kind of wrestled with these kind of things, not as maybe intense as the transplant, but it's, that those were always sort of in the air. And then, my dad is a pastor, and so I come from this faith background. So, conversations about faith and health and prayer and all has been, from before I was born. So that was not anything unusual or any, but yeah, it, like anyone, when you get attacked like to this degree, it becomes a real, like, okay, do I believe this, or what do I believe about this, and what does it mean, and how do we pray, and what, a host of questions. So for me, it's it's been a long trajectory of just pressing into things like prayer, and learning from different people who are experienced in praying for healing and that kind of thing, and making mistakes and stumbling like anybody would, but yeah, like for me personally, like, yeah, the faith has kind of almost always been there. It's just more like I believe I have lots of questions, and I'm going to ask them, and so, and, and it's been an incredible process to go through with my wife and with my kids, because that's intense in any situation, but to kind of go through all that and go through a second transplant with, a 5 and 7 year old, it's just, I got questions, they got questions, and we ask them together and we talk about it, and we pray and we seek wisdom and discernment, and we, always growing in like how to, like we talked about before, it's both, and it's not like it's science or faith to me. I mean, they're very interrelated. So like, what wisdom do doctors have, and what do they say? And, and then, they're often kind of just giving you information that they know. So, okay, take it back and pray and listen. And so, that's been an integral part of it all for me, throughout, really.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
How often do you have to go back? And I know it sounds like you have a great team where you are right now. Right?
Yeah.
As far as medical team. So how often do you have to check in and, that sort of thing? And what type of tests do they run for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, fortunately, the further out, the less you have to check in some ways. But so I live in Kansas City again now, but my transplant center is in St. Louis again. So, so I'm going to meet with them next month for the yearly appointment. I end up, seeing them, I mean, now really kind of just once a year, unless there's, some issue that arises that they want to, treat. But I do lab work kind of a lot at the, the hospital here is just, like 8 blocks from my house. So it's not that bad. Lab work, and then I'll do visits with them here kind of every 3 or 4 months, something like that right now. So,
Great.
So yeah, not too bad.
I look at almost like with the families, donor families, obviously they're like superheroes, but in a lot of ways, as a recipient, like you said, it's just so humbling. You can never like give this gift, it's so humbling. You can't like pass this gift along. You can't earn it. Like you said, there's no merit to it or anything like that. So, I really, the way you summed that up was just so perfect that, it's
cool.
almost just like survivor's guilt, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I just, kind of marvel at like, you went through these 2 transplants in the period of 2 years.
Right.
That's a lot of, it's a lot of trauma on the body. So, working your way back up, I mean, you just look great now.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's unreal. I mean, I finished a half marathon this past fall. I mean, it's just, it's been a lot of hard work and all that, but it's again been the outflow of like just gratitude and joy. You know what I mean? And we talked about the faith stuff. That's the perspective that I kind of see it from. Like, like for me, what I've always believed in is, the good news is ultimately about a free gift bestowed on you, not something you need to strive or earn or, work hard enough or pray enough to, working hard is a great thing. Praying is a great thing. Doing religious things are great. But in the outflow of gratitude for what has already been given to you, because other than that, it's this endless striving that nobody can attain, which is what it would be if you carry this heavy survivor's guilt of like, I have to prove or earn my worth as a human being, or that I was, received this gift. It's like, I don't, I guess I reconcile it with going like, it's not about deserve, it's just not, it just was a gift that was bestowed on me. I know some of the reasons why, but I don't know all of the reasons. And so, I receive it, and that's hard work. It's harder when I talk about it. Like as you become an adult and grow, like it's a whole lot easier to give than it is to receive. Like it's hard work to receive. You feel like you want to earn it. You feel you're going to prove or show everybody, and but I think most of life, not just for transplant recipients, is learning like how to receive something that you couldn't give to yourself, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, question. So you have a wife and you have 2 boys.
Yes.
So the boys were, I mean, they were younger elementary school, right? When you went through the second transplant. So
yeah,
how did those conversations go? How did they deal, or, you know, how did they handle daddy having this major surgery,
right.
you know, wrapping their heads around this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. And I think we were really open with them, kind of through the whole process, you know, for better or worse. I mean, they knew, you know, every time, I mean, they knew we were going to try to go to North Carolina and get evaluated. I mean, they knew all that, and it's heavy on them. And, you know, thankfully, both times, I think thankfully, like, they were in school, they're in good situations, and the school in Brooklyn was really good. And so they, you know, they had friends in there. It was distracting enough in a good way that it kind of helped them. But that night that we got the call, you know, the hospital was like, just show up here by 1 a.m. And we thought, okay, we'll just put our kids to bed, and you know, my wife and I will go up there. They were a mess, you know. They were, understandably so. I mean, they were crying, and they, you know, I'm like, we're not going to get them to go to bed, you know. I said to my wife, like, I'm just going to have to go by myself. We had somebody else, we had a friend there with us that was staying, but I'm like, I'm just going to have to go by myself. And so yeah, those were hard. And then they, you know, they came in, you know, a couple days after it happened, and they're, you know, it's like it is for everyone. It's a mix of excitement and joy, but there's all these tubes and stuff. I mean, it's a crazy experience. And so what we've tried to do a lot of work. You know, we did this after the first transplant, but even more after the second. I mean, we just do it all in terms of counseling, trauma therapy, you know, prayer stuff. I mean, we really try to, you know, kind of oversaturate them with opportunities to process that, you know, and be intentional about that. And I think that's been pretty good. You know, kids are resilient also, so they kind of, you know, they have an ability to roll with the punches, but that doesn't mean there's trauma under there, and there's, you know, things to address. So yeah, we've done the best we can, and you know, as they get older, I'm sure more stuff will be unraveled on how this has impacted their hearts, and how this has, you know, landed on them. You know, some of the ways they're able to articulate now, but you know, but time will reveal more, I'm sure. So yeah.
So just a couple last questions. I don't know if you have any that you want to wrap up with as well, but what would you say was the hardest part of either transplant or both for you?
For me, the moments we talked about, coming to grips with, like, that this was going to happen, you know, I think was the hardest emotionally, psychologically, spiritually for me, you know, all that, you know, and processing through that. The physical part of it was extremely difficult, but you know, again, kind of growing up with CF, you know, I wasn't, you know, I kind of growing up in and out of hospitals, and you know, that part wasn't that foreign to me, and you know, it was still difficult, but I you know, with being able to have a sense of, like, there's light at the end of the tunnel, that was made that part a little easy. I think the more daunting was just like, oh my gosh, I have to enter into this journey at all, and then, oh, I need to enter this journey again. You know, that's hard. You know, so yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to sneak one more question in.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're a young guy, and you were young when you first had your first surgery. Yeah. But you said you had grown used to not feeling well. So this is almost like a whole new reality. Now that you're feeling, you know, right? It's a whole new reality now, and I'll just.
It is.
Yeah, and so being younger.
Oh, go ahead. Oh no, yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I've never felt this well in my life, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I was just thinking, just being younger, when you first had, you know, when you had your first transplant, Did that weigh more on you psychologically than you think? Well, do you think if you were a little older and kind of expect your body to kind of, you know, a little older, you expect to run into problems, right? And I'm just saying this I'm saying this from a part that a relational part, because I was about 36 for my double transplant. So all I got was, people, you're too young to, you're too young to be feeling like this. You're too young. You know, what's going on? And you're thinking of answering a battery of questions like this, and it's frustrating in a way, but it also makes you think like, why me, right?
Right. Oh yeah. No, I definitely resonate with that, and you know, so I was 37 when I had the first one. So like, there's two sides of that, because on the one hand, most cystic fibrosis patients, like when I was born, the average life expectancy was 17. You know, so my perspective for most of those 37 years is like, man, I've got it good compared to them. You know, like, and in, you know, when I was in rehab, doing the transplant and in rehab, you know, it was pretty much around me. It was either, you know, early 20-year-olds or late teens cystic fibrosis patients, or people who were, you know, in their 60s, COPD, or, you know, pulmonary fibrosis, something like that. And so, you know, I was in the middle. So I feel kind of both the emotion of like, man, you know, the glass is half full. You know what I mean? I had cystic fibrosis, but I fought it off this long. And then, being around primarily older patients, is difficult, you know, to hear, you know, like I'm fighting to try to get back to my 2 and 4-year-old, you know, like through rehab, and you know, they're really hoping they can see their grandkids, and I'm like, man, that was hard for me, you know, because I'm like, I want them to see their grandkids, but it's hard not to be a little jealous, you know, to be like, man, I wish I was my grandkids I was talking about, you know. So again, I had to kind of still, you know, process a lot of that through prayer, a lot of like being able to have the perspective of gratitude, you know, and I think that was much easier when it was just me, you know, and you know, I was a 10-year-old going in the hospital, and the girl next door was 7-year-old and getting a lung transplant. You know, I'm like, whoa, you know, like that really shifted my perspective. But when I had kids, it was like, come on now, like, you know, like so yeah, that was and is tricky. But you know, again, I feel I've worked through some of that just in again the perspective, seeing the bigger picture, you know, and thinking about all those cystic fibrosis patients that would be like, oh, that's, you know, why you're struggling is like you have kids, you know, like they have the opportunity to ever think about that, you know. So it's perspective and you know, gratitude for and again, just kind of letting go. It's like, man, you know, all I can do is just be the best father I can, and there's literally nothing else I can do. You know what I mean? Like I can't, you know, I fight my health as hard as I can. I fight to be, you know, strive to be a more mature person and grown person and all that. But I can't, you know, carrying guilt and shame around is not going to help them or me or anybody. So, you know.
So just a couple more things. One is, I would love to know, you know, in this transplant and donation world, this whole world that we're all part of, we hear there's a lot of different misconceptions.
Yeah.
The number one misconception that you would like to break for people in terms of your transplant or transplants in general?
Wow, that's a great question. Can you give me like some top 5 ones that people have named? Because I haven't really thought about like what's the number one for me.
Well, so just in general, so with transplant and donations, like living donors have to take anti-rejection medications, or that, you know, you as a transplant patient, I've heard people say things like, you know, oh, you have some of the same feelings as the person who the the donor, you know, in your body, or, you know, now you're however old the person was when they passed, and that you have their organs, or that you're forever indebted to, you know, and we kind of talk about that with the survivor's guilt, but those kinds of things.
Right. No, that's good. Maybe from transplant perspective is, the biggest one might be that it's a cure and that everything is, you know, fine after. Now, I don't hear anybody verbalize that hardly, but I think there's definitely a notion of like, well, you're well now, so, you know what I mean, get it together, and you know what I mean, you don't need any more, you know, help. And so that's a more unspoken one that I just perceive. So it's hard I don't have a lot of examples of people like saying anything like that to me, but
that's when I think that I've heard, you know, since I'm a spouse of someone who has, I do hear that they're like, oh, well, once, you know, now that he has that, like, he doesn't have cardiomyopathy anymore. You know, you don't have cystic fibrosis anymore. It's like, no, it's still part of me. It's still my diagnosis. It's just that this is a treatment that, you know, it's considered a treatment. It's not considered a cure. So, yeah. And, you know, they think, you know, I think that a lot of times also they think like, okay, well, you have this now. So now you don't have all those doctor's appointments. Like, you're considered a healthy person, and, you know, how everybody else would be. So, yeah, that's the thing. Very fun. And then my last question for you would be, for anybody who is watching this today, who needs a transplant, who is just starting out on this journey, and we hope that they find this and find hope and comfort and support in it, what would you like them to know from you?
Yeah. So, my encouragement would be that there is hope when there would seem to be no hope at all. You know, I think everybody, transplant or not, gets to some point where they go, I don't see any hope in this situation, you know? And the question is there hope there? And, you know, so my journey largely in faith, and art, you know, both has been like, can there be hope in seemingly hopelessness circumstances, which I am actually working on a book with that title. So I am trying to put it to words to some degree, but nevertheless, you know, I know people go through challenges that I don't know about, and have circumstances that I don't know. You know, all I know is the ones that I've been through, and the ones that I've been through are pretty, you know, pretty seemingly hopeless. You know, like I've definitely, like, you know, seen some pretty dark roads. And so, so my encouragement would be that, you know, what I believe, you know, like I believe that there's hope that's outside of your circumstance, you know, and that, like, we all wish and pray and hope for better circumstances for everybody. But if my hope was in the condition of the circumstance, I would be in despair beyond belief, you know, like many points in my life, you know. So there's hope and love, and you know, for me, like, there's a donor, you know, for us who, you know, because of that donor we live. You know, I believe that spiritually, you know, like, I believe that I believe, like, God offers hope when there would seem to be no hope, you know. So I know that's, you know, tied to some specific beliefs that I have, but it's that's my framework through which I see the world, you know. So I that's where I draw hope. So I would, you know, I love to, I really do love to encourage people when they're at spots like that, because, again, not just transplant patients, we all get to a spot where we go, like, I'm looking, my eyes are straining, looking for hope, I don't see any. And I love to talk with people at that point. So, you know, by all means, anybody, like, please reach out to me, or anyone, you know, that can help you process that, because it is too much for anybody to, you know, the phrase in the medical community or any community, you know, you got this, you got the, like, I know for sure that I didn't have this. You know what I mean? Like, I needed help. I needed beyond me. and again, to lose the shame and the guilt with that, and go like, be vulnerable, be humble, and go like, you need other people, you need beyond yourself, just like everybody else does, you know. They really do. A lot of people, you know, put on these acts like they don't need that, but everybody does, and that's okay, you know. And receive it, and so that, you know, you can give back to people that are in spots where they don't see any hope either. So
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
Is there anything else that you would like people to know?
Yeah, man, just, you know, just encourage everybody, keep fighting, you know, like, you know, my story, probably like just about every transplant patient, there are moments where they lost will or reason to fight, and just like, you know, the ones of us that have made it through to see another day, like just kind of kept fighting when there didn't seem to even be a reason, you know. And just get, you know, whoever can come around and support you, whatever kind of prayers or encouragement or hope, to get one foot in front of the other. Because yeah, I could not have imagined feeling this well, you know. I never could have imagined it. And, you know, here I am, and I don't, you know, I try not to take it for granted, and every breath really is a gift, and that's true for transplant recipients or anybody. So keep fighting, keep fighting.
Well, thank you so much, Dylan, for being on with us today.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for watching, and we can't wait to see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today.
Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next guest.
We need your help to spread support and awareness for organ transplant and donation.
Please share this video and channel with your friends.
Tell someone something that you learned or heard from today's guest.
Get in touch with us if you'd like to join us as a guest.
See you next time.
Peace.